The stranger's footsteps. Emily had always considered her new home a sanctuary. It was a quaint two-story house on the edge of town, surrounded by dense woods. She'd moved in just a month ago, eager to leave the noise of the city behind. The silence, however, turned out to be louder than she anticipated. It started on a Friday night. Emily had just settled in for the evening with a cup of tea and a book when she heard it. A dull thud upstairs, followed by the unmistakable creak of floorboards. Her heart skipped a beat. She lived alone, and no one had a key to her house. For a moment she dismissed the noise, blaming it on the old house settling. But the footsteps grew louder. Setting her book aside, she stood, her pulse quickening. She grabbed her phone, debating whether to call the police, but decided to investigate first. She crept up the staircase, her hand gripping the railing as if it were a lifeline. The hallway was dark, save for the sliver of moonlight streaming through the window. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. The house fell silent. She checked each room meticulously, finding nothing amiss. The doors were locked, the windows sealed. She returned to the living room, convinced she was overreacting. The next night, it happened again. This time, the footsteps were heavier, deliberate. Emily bolted upright in bed, her stomach knotting with fear. She reached for her phone, dialing 911 with shaky fingers. As she whispered her address to the dispatcher, the footsteps stopped. The silence was suffocating. The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers swept through the house, checking every nook and cranny. They found no signs of forced entry, no evidence that anyone had been inside. "Old houses can make strange noises," one officer suggested, though his eyes betrayed doubt. Emily nodded, unwilling to argue, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was in her home. The third night. On the third night, Emily decided to stay awake. She sat in the living room with every light on, a baseball bat resting on her lap. Midnight came and went without incident. She began to relax, convincing herself that the previous nights had been figments of her imagination. At 2:13 a.m., the footsteps returned. This time they were accompanied by a faint tapping, as if someone was dragging their fingers along the walls. Emily's breath hitched. The sound grew louder, moving from room to room. It stopped directly above her. She couldn't take it anymore. She stormed upstairs, flipping on the hallway light. "Whoever you are, get out!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the house. The attic hatch creaked open. Emily froze, staring at the narrow opening in the ceiling. A cold draft seeped down, carrying with it the faint smell of damp wood. Summoning every ounce of courage, she pulled the ladder down and climbed into the attic. The air was thick and suffocating. Dust particles swirled in the beam of her flashlight. She swept the light across the room, revealing old boxes and cobwebs. In the corner, something caught her eye, a single wet footprint on the wooden floor. She fled the attic, slamming the hatch shut behind her. That night, she barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities. The discovery determined to find answers, Emily decided to investigate the house's history. She visited the local library and combed through old records. What she found chilled her to the bone. Her house had once belonged to a man named Victor Greaves, a recluse who was rumored to have gone mad. In the 1950s, neighbors reported hearing strange noises coming from the property. One day, Victor vanished without a trace. The house remained abandoned for decades until it was renovated and sold. Emily's hands trembled as she read the last line of an old newspaper article. Some say Victor never left. A dark presence. That night, Emily set up cameras around the house, determined to capture evidence of whatever was tormenting her. She spent hours watching the live feed, her nerves frayed. At 3:07 a.m., one of the cameras picked up movement. A shadowy figure moved across the upstairs hallway. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured. Emily stared in horror as it turned its head, as if looking directly at the camera, before disappearing into the attic. She bolted upstairs, clutching her baseball bat. The attic hatch was open again, swaying gently. She climbed up, her flashlight shaking in her hand. The attic was empty, but the wet footprint had multiplied. They formed a trail leading to a corner of the room. Emily approached cautiously, her heart pounding. She crouched down and pushed aside a stack of boxes, revealing a trapdoor she'd never noticed before. It was locked with a rusted padlock. The final confrontation. Unable to contain her curiosity, Emily retrieved a hammer and broke the lock. The trapdoor creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The air was